Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into a landmark Indian Supreme Court case that grappled with a deeply personal question. After spending 18 years building a life with someone, what happens when it all just ends? This is the story of Indra Sarma versus V.K.V. Sarma, and believe me, it's a case that really pushed the boundaries of how we define marriage and legal protection in modern India.
So let's just jump right in. This question right here is the heart of the entire legal battle. You share a life for nearly 2 decades, and then one day one person walks away. Is the other partner owed anything? The answer the Supreme Court came up with would end up having massive consequences for countless people.
Okay, so before we get into all the legal arguments and the courtroom drama, we really need to understand the human story here. To get why the court made the decision it did, you have to start with the relationship that sparked this whole thing.
Their story kicks off back in 1992. Indra Sarma quits her job to move in with her colleague, V.K.V. Sarma. And for the next 18 years, they built a life. They shared a home, a business was started in her name, she even went through 3 pregnancies. But then, in 2006, it all came crashing down. He ended the relationship just like that, leaving her completely high and dry with 0 financial support.
But here's the twist, and it is a huge one. V.K.V. Sarma, he was already married to someone else. He had 2 kids with his wife. And here's the most important part. Indra Sarma knew this. She knew it from day one. This fact, the fact that there was no deception, ends up being the absolute cornerstone of the entire legal case.
So, left with nothing, Indra Sarma did what you'd expect. She turned to the law for help. But the specific law she used was designed to protect women from domestic violence, and that immediately forced the courts to ask a really fundamental question. Did her situation even count under this law?
The law she invoked was the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005, or the DV Act. Now, this is a seriously powerful piece of social legislation. It's not just about protecting women from physical violence, it's also designed to stop economic abuse, which is exactly what she argued was happening when he cut her off financially.
It's funny how these massive, life-altering cases can boil down to just a few words. And for this one, everything came down to this single critical phrase right here. The law protects women in a domestic relationship, which it says includes a relationship in the nature of marriage. So the big question for the court was, did their 18 years together count as being in the nature of marriage? But hold on, the Supreme Court immediately made one thing crystal clear. This protection isn't some automatic guarantee for every couple that lives together. Nope, there's a line, a legal line, between a casual live-in situation and one that truly acts like a marriage. And this case was about to draw that line in the sand. And that, right there, set the stage for a huge courtroom battle. You had 2 sides with completely different ideas about what that phrase, in the nature of marriage, is actually supposed to mean. So on one side, you had Indra Sarma's lawyers. They were arguing for a really broad, flexible view of the law. They pointed to the 18 years, the shared home, the fact she was financially dependent, all the signs of a marriage. They said this is exactly the kind of vulnerable situation the law was made for. But V.K.V. Sarma's defense? Their argument was strict and it was simple. His first marriage was still legally valid, she knew it all along, so their relationship could never be marriage-like in the eyes of the law, period. They even argued that protecting Indra would be unfair to his legal wife and family. After bouncing around the lower courts getting different answers, the case finally landed at the Supreme Court of India. This was it. Everyone was waiting for the final word. And the verdict? It was swift and it was clear. Relief denied. The Supreme Court ruled that Indra Sarma's 18-year relationship did not qualify as being in the nature of marriage under the Domestic Violence Act. So you might be asking, how in the world did they get to that conclusion? Well, the court's logic was actually laid out in a few pretty clear steps. First, they said that for a relationship to be like a marriage, the people in it have to be legally able to marry each other. Step 2, V.K.V. Sarma couldn't legally marry her because, well, he was already married. Step 3, and this was the knockout punch, Indra Sarma knew this from the very beginning. So their conclusion, step 4, was that their relationship, no matter how long it lasted, could not be legally seen as being in the nature of marriage. But, and this is a really, really important but, the court was very careful to create a crucial exception. They made it clear that if a woman is tricked, if her partner lies and hides the fact that he's already married, then she is a victim and she can get protection under the law. But because Indra Sarma knew the truth, her case just didn't fit into that protected category. You see, this ruling wasn't just about one couple.
Oh no, its impact was going to ripple out across the entire country. It basically set a whole new rule book for how Indian courts have to look at live-in relationships from now on.
To make things easier for other courts down the line, the Supreme Court basically created a kind of checklist. They said, look, from now on, you need to consider the whole picture. How long were they together? Did they share money? Did they tell the world they were husband and wife? All that stuff matters. But, they stressed, even if you check all those boxes, you still have to clear that first hurdle. Were they legally allowed to get married in the first place?
Now here's the part I find absolutely fascinating. The court itself admitted that there's a problem here. In the final judgment, they actually pointed to a legislative gap. They basically said, hey, the law as it's written right now might not protect women in this exact situation. In a way, the court was looking directly at Parliament and saying, we've interpreted the law you gave us. Now it might be your turn to fix it.
And so that leaves us with this huge, lingering question. The Supreme Court definitely brought legal clarity and protected the idea of a legal marriage. But in drawing that very clear line, did it accidentally create a kind of legal vacuum, leaving a whole group of vulnerable women with no safety net at all? That is the complicated and really challenging legacy of this landmark case.